Hi everyone. Hey, turn that off. I'm reacting to what if Darth Jar Jar was real. And if you remember, like years ago, people made like fan videos and stuff about Darth Jar Jar. So let's see. What if Darth Jar Jar was real? And I'll put the channel description below. Star Wars Crew's channel video in the description. So you can check out the original video for yourself. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And let's see what if Darth Jar Jar is real.
What if Jar Jar was a Sith Lord? How would that change things? Let's find out. So in this timeline, everything would be the same as the original timeline until a short while prior to Yoda walking into Palpatine's office to fight him. In this timeline, before Yoda could get there, Palpatine would get a much more dangerous visitor, and that visitor was Darth Jar Jar. So as Palpatine sat in his office, now Emperor, reveling in the flawless execution of his grand plan, he would sense something he had not sensed since the night Darth Plagueis died. A dark presence that drew near. This would be what Palpatine is sensing. Palpatine would then wonder who or what this could be. Was it Lord Vader? He would wonder, but quickly Palpatine would realize that this thing coming for him is much stronger than the newly turned Sith Vader. And then, a few short moments later, putting all speculation to rest, Representative Jar Jar Binks of Naboo would walk in. Is this some kind of a trick? Palpatine would be thinking as he slowly got up from his chair, no longer feeling so relaxed. Representative Binks, why are you here? Palpatine inquired, his voice laced with a cautious curiosity. Misa had been noticing some changes, you might say, in the Republic. Jar Jar began, his casual demeanor in stark contrast to the tension that filled the room. Misa come to ask you, sir, why all this is happening? For the first time since he vanquished Darth Plagueis, palpable fear crept into Palpatine's heart. He composed himself before responding. The Jedi were traitors, Representative Binks. They've been dealt with accordingly. Jar Jar shook his head, his ears wobbling slightly with emotion. Misa never felt the Jedi were traitors. Obi, Annie, Master and Mace, them were Misa friends. How come you saying they're bad, Palpy? Jar Jar asked. Palpatine, sensing the gravity of the situation, insisted. The Jedi were a facade, Representative Binks. They were plotting to take over the Republic. They had deceived everyone. Even me, Palpatine said. And then following this, Jar Jar's gaze wandered momentarily before fixing on Masameda. You thinking what Palpatine saying is true? Jar Jar asked Masameda, his voice carrying an unexpected weight. And Masameda, caught in the crossfire of a confrontation he never anticipated, hesitated under Jar Jar's intense scrutiny. Yes, Representative. What the Emperor says is correct. The Jedi, they were lying. Ameda managed to stammer, his confidence shaken by Palpatine's evident fear. Jar Jar then stepped closer to Masameda, his shadow looming over the Chagrian. Misa thinking, you're a lion, Jar Jar stated, glancing down at his own arm as if revealing a hidden truth. The atmosphere inside the Emperor's office then thickened further with tension, an unspoken threat hanging in the air. Jar Jar's hands slowly clenched into fists at his sides, a physical manifestation of his growing displeasure. Misa thought of as a fool by many. Misa don't mind, but Misa hate being lied to, Jar Jar said, his voice taking a darker, more menacing tone. And then, as Jar Jar looked up from his clenched fist, Palpatine saw a chilling transformation. Jar Jar's eyes glowed yellow, mirroring Sidious's own eyes. However, as Sidious could see, Jar Jar's eyes were more intense. And then, sensing the hostility, Palpatine's royal guards moved to intercept Jar Jar. But with a simple, authoritative raise of his right arm, Jar Jar sent the two guards crashing into the office ceiling with such force that it almost shook the very foundations of the room. And then, amidst a horrifying silence, the crunching sounds of bones breaking echoed through the chamber as Jar Jar, tapping deeply into the dark side, crushed the life out of Palpatine's guards, their bodies remaining pinned to the ceiling, even as Jar Jar took his focus away from them. Palpatine was frozen in horror as the scene unfolded before him. This is impossible. Jar Jar Binks, a figure of ridicule, an agent of the Force? Palpatine's mind raced, trying to piece together how such a creature like Jar Jar could have deceived an entire galaxy, himself included. And beside Palpatine, Master Meta was petrified, his body refusing to move, his mind overwhelmed by fear. And then Jar Jar turned his menacing gaze back to Ameda. "Who is there you say was lying again? The Jedi? Help me to remember what you just said," Jar Jar asked, his voice deceptively calm. Fumbling his words, Ameda stammered. The Jedi were innocent. Palpatine is lying." He spoke with the conviction of someone who believed they had no other option, that perhaps aligning with this new, terrifying power was his only chance of survival. Jar Jar then advanced towards Meta, the yellow in his eyes burning brighter. "That's not what you said before," he pointed out, his tone dark. "Misa asked you, sir, to remind me, sir, what you initially said. Mr. Patience, it's getting thin," Jar Jar said. Ameda, now visibly trembling, struggled to recall his earlier statement under Jar Jar's intense scrutiny. I said the Emperor was correct," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper, fear strangling his words. Jar Jar's gaze then intensified, his power palpable in the air. "See? That wasn't so hard. Now was it?" Jar Jar's voice was a dark, mocking echo of his former self. Jar Jar then turned away from Ameda, a simmering fury evident in his posture.
Somewhat terrifying, but yeah.
"You're still lying, though," he said, with a calm that belied the storm brewing within him. Ameda, caught in a vortex of fear and confusion, tried to find the right words to placate the enraged Gungan. "But you said to..." Ameda's voice then trailed off, choked by his inability to articulate a defense. In Ameda's mind, words swirled like a tempest, but none seemed capable of quelling the immense storm that was Jar Jar Binks. Ameda was smart, but he was too stupid to see. Jar Jar had made up his mind 10 minutes ago, and proving this without another word, Jar Jar called upon the Force, his anger manifesting in a visible energy that crackled around him. And then, with the flick of his wrist, he hurled Ameda across the room, the Chagrin's body colliding with the giant vase, shattering it into countless little pieces. And amidst this chaos, Jar Jar observed, Ameda is clumsy, but... Suddenly, his speech pattern shifted, his voice becoming eerily calm and devoid of his usual accent. "She's particularly clumsy with her lies," Jar Jar said, his deceptive mask leaving him for a brief moment. And then the fear in Ameda's eyes only intensified as Jar Jar reverted to his customary dialect, the transition marking a chilling return to the facade that had deceived the galaxy. Looking at Mas Ameda as he now shivered in fear, Jar Jar said the following. "You are shivering from fear? Or is it the cold? Let me heat things up for you, Ameda," Jar Jar said, a grotesque appreciation in his tone as he then conjured red force lightning, the most powerful kind of force lightning, and then directed it towards Mas Ameda. Lightning struck Ameda, who growled in agony, a sound that only fueled Jar Jar's anger. The intensity of the lightning grew, the air crackling with power, as Ameda began resembling something one would find in a food stall in the youth crew entertainment district of Coruscant. Yet, as Ameda's cries began to wane, signaling his impending demise, Jar Jar ceased his assault, and then he stood there, looking at the burned form of Ameda. Admiring his work, Jar Jar inhaled deeply, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "Misa was hoping for a better smell. Gungan nostrils, no liking these stench of betrayal."
Oh, come on.
And then having said this, Jar Jar called upon the Force to levitate Ameda's charred body, positioning it between himself and Palpatine. And then, with a sinister glee, Jar Jar twisted Ameda's body using the Force before ripping it apart in a display of raw power, splattering Palpatine's opulent office with red, some of which found its way onto Jar Jar's face. But Jar Jar, unfazed, wiped off the red from his face with his tongue. "Misa was right. You don't smell or taste as good as your species usually does," he said, his voice a mix of mockery and menace. "It's the stink of betrayal, you know. Very, very stinky." And having said this, Jar Jar again turned his attention to Palpatine, his eyes gleaming with malevolence. "Now, about our little empire," Jar Jar began, his voice eerily calm amidst the chaos he had brought. "Misa thinking the office looks much better with this new paint job. What do you think, huh?" Jar Jar asked Palpatine. And Palpatine, master of the dark side, found himself at a loss for words, confronted by a being whose depth of darkness surpassed even his own. And realizing the depth of the situation, Palpatine attempted to engage Jar Jar in a dialogue, hoping to unravel the mystery of his transformation and perhaps to negotiate Palpatine's own survival. Representative Pinks, what is it that you desire? What are you, exactly? Jar Jar, however, wasn't interested in divulging his plans just yet. Misa asked Yusa, how does the office look now? Jar Jar interjected, his tone demanding an immediate response from Palpatine. And visibly shaken, Palpatine glanced at the blood-spattered walls and responded, "It looks good, Representative," Palpatine said. And hearing this, Jar Jar turned to examine the walls again, his gaze scrutinizing every little detail. No. Misa thinking, it looks bad. What are you thinking now, Palpy? Caught in Jar Jar's manipulative question, Palpatine stuttered. It looks bad, Representative. And hearing this, with a swift turn, Jar Jar faced Palpatine, his expression one of mock surprise. Why are you changing your opinion, huh? You're thinking Misa stupid. Let me show you how stupid I am. Revealing a crimson lightsaber hidden within his robes, Jar Jar ignited the blade, its glow illuminating his sinister grin. This contest gonna decide who the stronger is, who really had all of them fooled. In a moment of panic, Palpatine leaped up, attempting to flee the confrontation. But Jar Jar, with surprising agility, intercepted him. Landing gracefully in front of the terrified Emperor, Jar Jar taunted, "If so powerful, Yusa, why leave?" As Palpatine, driven by desperation and fear, unsheathed his own lightsaber, a duel unlike any other erupted within the confines of Palpatine's office. The clash of blades was a symphony of chaos, each strike and parry resonating with the intensity of their wielder's emotions. Palpatine, despite his mastery and cunning, found himself taken aback by Jar Jar's fighting style. It was unorthodox, unpredictable, and eerily reminiscent of his late master, Darth Plagueis, whom he, Palpatine, had betrayed and murdered 13 years ago. The way Jar Jar moved, the fluidity, the precision of his attacks, it was as if Plagueis' shadow had returned to haunt him, this time in the guise of the Gungan he had so severely underestimated. The duel then escalated, both combatants utilizing all forms of lightsaber combat. From the aggressive onslaughts of Form 7 to the precise defenses of Form 3, it was a display of unmatched skill and power. And then, amidst the fury of their clash, a realization dawned upon Palpatine, a truth so shocking it nearly halted his advance. The dark energy surrounding Jar Jar, the way he fought, his mastery over the Force, it all pointed to one undeniable fact. Plagueis had taken a second apprentice. Jar Jar, this seemingly clumsy Gungan, was indeed another apprentice of Plagueis. And then, with this revelation still echoing in his mind, Jar Jar's lightsaber found its mark, severing Palpatine's arms in a swift, decisive blow. Palpatine then collapsed to the floor, his saber clattering away, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Jar Jar, with a calm that contrasted the intensity of their duel, began to pace around the room once Palpatine had been disarmed. He admired the art pieces that adorned the walls of Palpatine's office, his demeanor casual as if the momentous battle had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. When Plagueis came to Naboo, you were not the only one who caught his eye, Jar Jar began, his voice carrying a depth that seemed out of place with his usual antics. Misa, a lowly Gungan, cast away from Misa's society because of Misa's abilities, also piqued Master Plagueis' interest. He continued, Plagueis trained Misa in secret. Misa knew you killed him, Palpy. But in the way of the Sith, an apprentice killing their master, well, let's just say it's been known to happen. So Misa wasn't angry at you because of that. Jar Jar's expression then softened slightly, a hint of nostalgia creeping into his tone.
You say you'll never...
Come on.
Forged by the sea.
Misa really liked being the goofy Gungan among the Jedi and the Senators. It was the first time Misa felt peace. Misa was happy. Turning to gaze back to Palpatine, who lay defeated and disarmed on the floor, Jar Jar's voice hardened. But Yusa Palpy, Yusa destroyed the peace Misa had found, the peace Misa cherished. Jar Jar stood over Palpatine, his gaze cold and unyielding. Yusa need to pay for what Yusa done, he declared, his voice a chilling promise of retribution. Palpatine, lying defeated and armless on the floor, attempted to bargain, plead, and reason with the Gungan Sith Lord, but his words fell on long, deaf ears as Jar Jar again began circling the office, his eyes eventually settling on Palpatine's prized uranium statue of Sistros Nevat, an ancient sage. The statue wasn't a mere statue, however. It was inside this extremely heavy statue that Palpatine kept his lightsaber hidden. But none of that really mattered here. With a flick of his wrist, Jar Jar called the statue to himself using the Force, levitating it above his head. He brought it close to Palpatine, who could only muster a feeble "no, no" in protest. Jar Jar loomed over Palpatine, the statue hovering menacingly in the air. "Just want to know how Misa pretended to be so clumsy?" Jar Jar asked, his voice dripping with malice. Jar Jar then feigned losing balance of the statue, letting it teeter dangerously above Palpatine. She repeated this several times, each instance a mock demonstration of the facade he had been maintaining for so long. "Misa, see how easy it was?" Jar Jar taunted, reveling in Palpatine's fear and helplessness. Palpatine remained silent, his eyes wide with terror, understanding now the depth of Jar Jar's deception and power. Observing Palpatine's shivering form, Jar Jar mused, "Misa also looks cold. Don't worry, Palpy, Misa helped with that." And then, without warning, Jar Jar unleashed a torrent of red Force lightning at Palpatine. Jar Jar also held up the statue of Sistros as he did this, with complete ease. And Palpatine, who was defenseless, mainly because he had lost his arms, was unable to counter or escape as Jar Jar's fury was channeled into him. And then finally, after Palpatine's suffering became boring, Jar Jar whispered the following, "Goodbye, Palpy." And then he flung the statue into the air, following which it came crashing down onto Palpatine's face, crushing him beneath his weight.
Bye.
A final crushing blow that would ensure the end of Darth Sidious's reign of terror. And then, with his task completed, Jar Jar left Palpatine's office, his demeanor as nonchalant as if he had been a bystander, rather than the architect of Palpatine's demise. And then, as he walked out of Palpatine's office, Jar Jar sensed Master Yoda's approach, and decided to confront the Jedi Master. And as Yoda arrived, witnessing Jar Jar just standing there, Yoda asked Jar Jar what he was doing there. But without saying anything, Jar Jar employed his power of persuasion, subtly influencing Yoda's mind. "Everything will be alright, Master Yoda," Jar Jar assured him, his voice imbued with a persuasive calm. "Alright, everything is. Fine, everything will be," Yoda repeated, his mind clouded by Jar Jar's influence. And then, believing there was no longer a threat, Yoda turned away, and with the help of Bail Organa, left Coruscant. And Jar Jar just stood there, watching all this. But Jar Jar's work was not done. With the demise of Palpatine, Representative Jar Jar Binks had two crucial tasks ahead of him. The first was to save Anakin Skywalker, who Jar Jar could sense was in danger on Mustafar, a consequence of Palpatine's manipulations and Obi-Wan Kenobi's desperate actions. Jar Jar knew this. The second task was to call off Order 66, a command that had led to the near extermination of the Jedi Order, who Jar Jar had actually grown to appreciate. And as for how Jar Jar knew about Mustafar and the specifics of Order 66, well, Jar Jar acquired all this information by probing Palpatine's mind as he was weak and begging for his life. An easy task for one as powerful as Jar Jar. Anyways, soon after killing Palpatine and getting out of Palpatine's office without anyone noticing, Jar Jar, utilizing his authority as the junior representative of Naboo, boarded his personal shuttle and instructed the clone who was piloting it to take him to Mustafar. And the clone did so. And upon arriving in the Mustafar system, Jar Jar reached out with the Force and identified where Anakin was. And eventually, he and his clone companions found Anakin, who was left to perish by Obi-Wan. And then immediately after finding the young Jedi, Jar Jar instructed the clones to bring a medical capsule, following which Jar Jar and the clones took Anakin back to Coruscant. And then, unlike in the original timeline where Anakin was hastily encased in a life-sustaining suit, Jar Jar instead, in this timeline, had Anakin placed in a Bacta tank. This decision, which is a significant deviation from the original timeline, would allow Anakin the chance to heal and potentially reclaim some substance of his former self, both physically and mentally. So side note, in the original timeline, Anakin was immediately given the suit with no Bacta. Palpatine wanted to ensure that Vader felt pain, but Darth Jar Jar wouldn't want that. So instead, he asked Anakin thrown into a tank of Bacta, where given the nature of his injuries, Anakin would have to stay for at least months. But anyways, with Anakin recuperating in Bacta, Jar Jar turned his attention to the second task. He knew that to fully dismantle Palpatine's legacy, he needed to stop the ongoing purge of the Jedi. And understanding that the Republic Security Council held the power to halt Order 66, Jar Jar requested a private meeting with his members. And among the attendees of this meeting was Tarkin, a figure known for his strategic mind and loyalty to Palpatine's vision of order. And upon entering this meeting with the Security Council, Jar Jar was met with a mix of confusion and curiosity by all those present. Tarkin, particularly, eyed Jar Jar with a mixture of disdain and suspicion. Representative Binks, to what do we owe this urgent convening? Tarkin began, his tone laced with a hint of impatience. Misa here to discuss a matter of great importance, Jar Jar started, with most of the council not paying him much attention. Order 66. It's need to be stopped. Now, Jar Jar said. And having heard this, the members of the Security Council looked at Jar Jar with confusion and resentment. And why would we consider such a request? Questioned a council member, skepticism evident in his voice. Misa feel a grave mistake has been made. Them Jedi are not our enemies. This order was based on lies. Jar Jar pressed, his gaze meeting each member's. Tarkin leaned forward, intrigued. And what evidence do you bring to support these claims, Representative Binks? Tarkin asked. And having heard this, and having felt Tarkin's resentment towards him, Jar Jar's fury seemed to boil just beneath the surface as Tarkin challenged his claims for evidence. The atmosphere in the room tensed as Jar Jar's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint reflecting his anger. The force around him thickened, palpable to those sensitive enough to feel its weight. And then, with a swift motion that left a blur in the eye, Jar Jar stood up and advanced towards Tarkin, the exit to the meeting room slamming shut with a resonant thud, controlled by Jar Jar's will alone. You seek evidence? Jar Jar asked, the room's temperature seeming to drop with the ice in his voice. Here, use the evidence, Jar Jar said, before delivering a powerful slap right across Tarkin's face. The impact so powerful, it sent several of Tarkin's teeth scattering across the floor like pearls dropped from a necklace. And witnessing this, all those present in the meeting gasped, a collective intake of breath marking the shock of the council members as they witnessed the unthinkable. Tarkin, caught off guard and humiliated, attempted to retaliate, his hands reaching for Jar Jar in a futile attempt at defense, but Jar Jar, with extreme ease, grabbed Tarkin by his belt and hoisted him up. With the flick of his wrist, Jar Jar hung Tarkin on a decorative spear that adorned the meeting room wall, a symbol of the Republic's martial heritage now repurposed into a makeshift hook. Tarkin then dangled there by the belt around his waist, toothless and embarrassed, and a stark warning to any who might still doubt Jar Jar's resolve. Turning to face the assembly, Jar Jar's presence filled the room, an oppressive force that demanded attention. Yusuf will halt Order 66. Right now, he commanded, his voice echoing with the weight of his authority. An authority granted not by legality, but by the Force. The Force emanated from him in waves, pressing down on the council members, infiltrating their minds with the undeniable truth of his words. The Jedi are innocent. Palpatine had betrayed the Republic. You will top Order 66. One by one, the minds of the council members bent under the sheer force of Jar Jar's will. Those who tried to resist found themselves struggling against an overwhelming tide, their mental defenses crumbling like sandcastles before the ocean's might. Stronger minds among them, like the one that Tarkin had, those who dared to hold out hope of resistance, simply broke, their sanity fracturing under the pressure, leaving them whispering incoherently to themselves. And then, as Jar Jar's decree settled over the room, a silence followed, the kind that comes after a storm has passed, leaving awe and fear in its wake. The council members, now thoroughly convinced or broken, nodded their agreement, their voices a murmur of consent, drowned out by the gravity of Jar Jar's presence. With his message now successfully delivered, Jar Jar straightened, the ominous aura around him receding as if it was never there. Good day, he said. The simplicity of his farewell a stark contrast to the complexity of the emotions swirling through the room.
Good day.
Jar Jar then turned and left, his steps echoing with the finality of the decision made, leaving behind a council shaken to its core. The next actions clear. Order 66 would be halted, the Jedi's innocence proclaimed, and the Republic's course corrected. The Republic Security Council unanimously agreed. And as for what happened after this, well, in the aftermath of Darth Jar Jar's confrontation with Palpatine and the halting of Order 66, the galaxy underwent a profound transformation, the second one in that week. The Empire, its dark foundation crumbled, gave way to the resurgence of the Republic, or the New Republic as it came to be known in the years that followed. A new Chancellor was elected, one who pledged to restore the values of democracy and peace that had once been the Republic's guiding principles. And amidst this political rebirth, Jar Jar Binks went back to being a seemingly goofy and clumsy Gungan, one that never drew much of anyone's attention, mostly because they found him annoying, which is exactly what Jar Jar wanted. The surviving Jedi, declared innocent of all charges fabricated by Palpatine, returned to Coruscant. Their order, though diminished, was determined to rebuild. Ahsoka Tano, Yoda, and Obi-Wan Kenobi were among those who led the resurgence. And as for Luke and Leia, with Palpatine's demise and Anakin Skywalker's presumed death, Obi-Wan and Yoda saw no further need to hide Luke and Leia, and they were brought to the temple on Coruscant so that they may be trained as Jedi. As for Padme, tragically in this timeline as well, she passed away. So side note, there is a theory that Padme died in the original timeline because Palpatine had transferred her life force into Anakin, but many seem to disagree with that, so here I'm just gonna go with Padme dying regardless. Do let me know if I'm wrong. But anyways, the Jedi Order begins to rebuild, and as for the clone army, the Jedi realized that the inhibitor chips implanted into the clones were put there with the purpose of forcing the clones to kill all the Jedi. And because of this, the Republic and the Jedi began a galaxy-wide process of removing the inhibitor chips from the clones, and also clone production was stopped on Kamino. But anyways, as for what happened to Anakin Skywalker in this timeline, months later, Anakin was removed from his bacta tank by the medical droids, because by this point, Anakin had been physically healed enough to be fitted with advanced cybernetics that allowed him a semblance of normalcy. And it was only at this point that news of Anakin's survival got out to the public. This was also because of Jar Jar's influence, as he believed that if Anakin's survival was immediately made news, some surviving Jedi might try to assassinate him. So Jar Jar, wanting things to calm down a bit, had this news kept hidden, until now, when Anakin was finally awake. And as for how the Republic and the Jedi Order reacted to Anakin's survival, well, the galaxy, of course, knew that Anakin had sided with the clones and marched on the temple. It would have been all over the holonet. So the Republic, in this timeline, would know that Anakin had turned on the Jedi. And by this point in this timeline, the citizens of the Republic also know that Palpatine had betrayed the Republic and had used the clones to destroy the Jedi Order, who had been guardians of the Republic for 25,000 years. So many in the Republic would come to believe that Anakin had also betrayed his brethren and the Republic. Although no legal action would be taken against Anakin because, at the time, he was acting under direct orders from the Emperor. And many of Anakin's supporters would argue over the holonet that Anakin was simply a soldier following orders, given by his superior at the time. But many others would argue against this, and that would be a debate on the holonet. Suffice to say, a lot of holotubers made a lot of videos about this topic. As for how the Jedi reacted, well, by this point, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and the others who survived know that Anakin has no legal backing. He's no longer the Emperor's second hand, he has no armies, and with his diminished power, he was not that big of a threat. We could handle him if Skywalker became a threat. This was the general sentiment among the Jedi. Basically, Skywalker had no forms of authority by this point. Because of that, the Jedi were not worried. And as for Luke and Leia's safety, well, we'll get to that right away. But anyways, coming back to Anakin himself, when he woke up on his hospital bed in the Grand Republic medical facility, there was only one person beside him, and it wasn't Jar Jar. Jar Jar by this point had gone to Naboo. I'll get to why in a minute. So instead, the person who was by Anakin's side when he woke up was none other than Ahsoka Tano, cause she was the sole person who believed that there was still good within Anakin. Obi-Wan, consumed by his own guilt and sorrow, could not see the possibility of Anakin's redemption, as Ahsoka did, and he also found himself unable to remain on Coruscant. Believing himself responsible for Anakin's fall, despite Yoda arguing otherwise, Obi-Wan sought solace in distance, retreating to distant temples where the Force whispered not of politics and war, but of peace and reflection. So basically, by the time Anakin woke up, Obi-Wan was far away from Coruscant. He couldn't bear to stay there. But coming back to Anakin and Ahsoka, in a sterile room within the newly reinstated Republic medical facility, the sound that stirred Anakin awake from months of being unconscious was Ahsoka's voice, soft yet filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "Anakin," she whispered, her presence a calming force as his eyes fluttered open. "Where am I?" Anakin's voice was weak, his mind racing to piece together the fragments of his last memories. "Everything's fine, Anakin, you're safe," Ahsoka assured him, trying to anchor him to the present. But as Anakin's gaze fell upon his cybernetic arms and legs, the weight of his actions, Operation Nightfall, Mustafar, the duel with Obi-Wan, and most agonizingly Padme, crashed into him like a tidal wave. "Padme, where is she?" Anakin asked, dread lacing his voice, as if afraid of the answer he would get. Ahsoka's heart plunged at the question, knowing the pain her answer would inflict. She's gone, Anakin," Ahsoka said gently, her voice barely above a whisper. The revelation shattered whatever composure Anakin had managed to muster. His grief erupted in a scream, a raw sound of loss and despair. Ahsoka reached out, trying to soothe the storm within Anakin, but his anguish was a tempest too fierce to calm. Within his mind, all Anakin could see was him strangling Padme. She had caused her death, Anakin told himself. And then, left with no other option, Ahsoka administered a sedative to Anakin, watching in sorrow as Anakin's turmoil eased into a drug-induced slumber. And then later, when Anakin woke again, Ahsoka was still by his side, a silent sentinel of compassion and understanding. Anakin's soul was a well of sorrow, and as he grappled with the reality of Padme's death, Ahsoka remained a comforting presence. Also, Ahsoka didn't know that Luke and Leia were the children of Padme and Anakin. Only Bail, Yoda, and Obi-Wan knew that, so she offered no words about them, instead opting to share in Anakin's mourning for Padme. "She is part of the Force now, Anakin," Ahsoka assured him. And as the days and weeks went by and Anakin recovered, Ahsoka told him of the recent events that had reshaped the galaxy. "Sidious was killed by separatist assassins," she said, not knowing the truth of Darth Jar Jar. "The Empire is gone and the Republic has been restored. The Jedi Order, we're rebuilding." From this, Anakin gathered that Ahsoka had elected to rejoin the Order. Anakin, lost in a sea of regret, attempted to articulate his reasons for his actions, but Ahsoka interrupted softly. "I know, Anakin. That wasn't you. Palpatine manipulated you. Most don't see it that way, but I do. You could never do any of those things. That can't have been you, Anakin." So side note, one of the reasons why Ahsoka would be so understanding of Anakin would be because, while Ahsoka, Anakin, and Obi-Wan did upon Mortis, Ahsoka had seen Anakin being turned to the dark side by the son who was the embodiment of the dark side. And Ahsoka had also seen Anakin being turned back to the light, so she knows that when one is under the grip of the dark side, they are not themselves, especially given how, during her time on Mortis, she herself had been turned to the dark side, and tried to do things that she would never have done when she was her normal self, so that is one of the reasons why Ahsoka is so understanding of her former master. And even later, as the months went by and Anakin was well enough to leave the medical facility, he faced a very uncertain future. His heroism, his status as the hero of the Clone Wars had been almost completely tarnished. Most of the galaxy saw him as a traitor. Now, the empire that he once hoped to lead had been destroyed as quickly as it came into existence. He was no longer a member of the Jedi Order. He no longer held any authority. Every single aspect of his previous life had been lost to him. His arms were gone, his legs were gone, his body is not what it used to be, and his sensitivity to the Force had diminished, although it was quite significantly still there. And worst of all, Padme and their unborn child was also gone, for which he blamed himself. So suffice to say, Anakin had nothing and no one, except for the sister he had in Ahsoka. And Ahsoka, understanding the precarious edge upon which Anakin now balanced, resolved to stand by his side no matter what, even if she had to leave the Jedi Order for it. "You're not alone, Anakin. I won't let you face this by yourself," she declared, her voice firm with resolve. She feared that, left to his own devices, Anakin might succumb to despair. And so she stayed by his side. And that is where we will be leaving the story of Anakin and Ahsoka in this timeline. What do you think would happen now? But, coming back to Darth Jar Jar, after the Jedi Order
I think that would be a good, part 2. Lead up to continue with, I think a part 2 would be nice to continue when what he left off of Ahsoka and Skywalker. Part 2 of that would be nice.
At rebuild, Representative Binks made his way back to Naboo, where in his private quarters he sat in deep Sith meditation. But Jar Jar was not alone in this meditation. Seated opposite him was another much younger Gungan, Darth Jar Jar's apprentice. But then, as they were both meditating, eyes closed, Jar Jar opened his eyes, and then he looked for his lightsaber, and having found it, he activated it and killed his apprentice. "Misa so clumsy," he said as he watched his apprentice die. So the reason why Jar Jar did that was because he was raising his apprentice not with the intention of making him a Sith, but with the intention of sacrificing him to the Dathomiri witches so that Jar Jar could commune with Darth Vitiate to become the most powerful being in the galaxy. Or at least that's one way the story could go. What do you think? Anyways, that's it for the video. If you liked it, please do leave a like and consider subscribing. And if you want to help out the channel, do check out my Patreon. Link is in the description, where for $1 or more a month, you can get early access to videos and some exclusive content I keep on wanting to post there. Anyways, goodbye, stay hydrated, and make good decisions in life, I guess.
You guys really, that's nice. But yeah. Alright. That's the end of that video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And again, I'll have the channel in the description below, so you can check out the original video and the channel. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And don't forget to check out my reaction playlist for more reactions. Bye for now. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.